USS Woodworth was a Benson-class destroyer in the United States Navy during World War II. She was named for Commander Selim E. Woodworth. Woodworth was laid down on the 30th of April 1941 at San Francisco, California, by the Bethlehem Steel Company, launched on the 29th of November 1941, sponsored by Mrs. Selim E. Woodworth, niece and daughter-in-law of Commander Woodworth, and commissioned on the 30th of April 1942, Lieutenant Commander R.C. Webb, Jr. in command. Service history: World War II. After 4 months spent in fitting out and shakedown, Woodworth spent the remainder of 1942 performing escort duty in the Southwest Pacific area. She stopped at many ports between Australia and Guadalcanal. Woodworth was attached to Task Force 65 in January 1943, conducting patrols and exercises at the western entrance to Espiritu Santo, New Hebrides. On the 2nd of February, Woodworth passed to the control of Vice Admiral Richard P. Leary, who commanded TF-69 from his flagship, New Mexico. 2 days later, that formation was merged with TF-18, consisting of the cruiser Wichita, 2 aircraft carriers, 3 light cruisers, and 4 destroyers. An oiler and another destroyer also joined the force on the 5th of February. The month of February was devoted to patrolling and escorting transports in waters between the Solomon Islands and the New Hebrides. After escorting transports to the Fiji Islands on the 1st of March, Woodworth returned to Espiritu Santo on the 13th of March and joined TF-15, organized around the aircraft carrier Enterprise. Woodworth entered port at Espiritu Santo on the 21st of March, and the following day commenced tender availability. On the 3rd of April, she headed back to the Solomons, arriving at Tulungi on the 5th of April for entrance patrol. The next day, Woodworth escorted the oiler Tappahannock to Cookham, then resumed her patrol. On the 7th of April, while escorting Tappahannock in the Solomons area, Woodworth came under enemy air attack by 6 planes north of Ruas-Ura Island. 4 bombs dropped close aboard Tappahannock. 2 struck the sea on the starboard side and threw considerable water over the ship. The attack, which lasted about 4 minutes, caused no personnel casualties and only minor material damage. Woodworth spent the remainder of April and early May in tactical training exercises, escort, and patrol in waters between the New Hebrides and New Caledonia. For the 8th of May to the 29th of June, Woodworth escorted transports carrying reinforcements to Guadalcanal and helped to screen TF-10, consisting of 2 carriers, 3 battleships, 1 cruiser, and several destroyers, to Noumea. Woodworth continued on to Auckland, New Zealand, where she underwent restricted availability before escorting the oiler Tallulah to Noumea. Woodworth then screened transports steaming from Espiritu Santo to Guadalcanal. On the 30th of June, while escorting amphibious forces to Rendezvous Island, Solomon Islands, Woodworth came under air attack by 12 low-flying Japanese torpedo bombers. Woodworth's maneuvers enabled her to avoid the torpedoes, and she suffered only 1 personnel casualty and mere superficial damage from 3 machine gun hits. On the 2nd of July 1943, Woodworth and the destroyer Jenkins bombarded Japanese positions on Wickham Island, Vanguna, New Georgia, to assist the advance of troops ashore. The next day, Woodworth sailed for Tulungi, touched at Port Purvis and Rendezvous Harbor, and arrived off Rice Anchorage on the 5th of July 1943 to participate in the first landing operations there. Later that day, she headed for Port Purvis. On the 11th of July, Woodworth, along with the destroyers Kilty, Crosby, and Schley, took part in the second landing operations at Rice Anchorage. While returning to Guadalcanal the following morning, Taylor fired on depth-charged, but failed to sink the Japanese submarine I-25. On the 13th of July, as part of Task Group 36.1, Woodworth took part in the Battle of Kolombangara, one of a series of naval engagements for control of waters between Vella Livella and Kolombangara to the south and Kwasial to the north. The Japanese force consisted of 1 cruiser and 5 destroyers. Woodworth fired 4 torpedoes, and a 5th misfired. During the action, she was struck a glancing blow to the stern by Buchanan, causing some flooding and light damage, but she continued to screen the cruiser St. Louis, which was hit by a torpedo. The destroyer Gwin was also hit and exploded. Nothing could be seen of the destroyer but a 300-foot-high column of smoke. Damage control efforts for Gwin were futile, and she was scuttled. Woodworth suffered no personnel casualties. Woodworth conducted patrol and escort operations between Espiritu Santo and Guadalcanal until the 7th of October, when she joined TF-38. Following training exercises, she departed Espiritu Santo on the 29th of October with TF-38 organized around the carriers Saratoga and Princeton. They launched air attacks on Buka, Shortland Islands, on 1 and 2 November 1943 and conducted raids on Rabaul on 5 and again on the 11th of November before becoming detached from TF-38 on the 14th of November. Woodworth sailed for Guadalcanal on the 16th of November in the escort of the transport Pinckney, then took part in patrol operations in the Solomon area until late December as part of TG 36.1. On the 26th of December, Woodworth departed Espiritu Santo to carry a deck cargo of 1,500 rounds of 5-inch projectiles and 1,500 rounds of 5-inch powder charges to Port Purvis near Tulungi. On the evening of the 8th of January 1944, Woodworth took part in the bombardment of the Shortland Islands and encountered ineffective return fire from the shore. She conducted escort and patrol operations between the Northern Solomons and the Bismarck Archipelago until the 13th of January, when she joined Destroyer Squadron 12 and, with the destroyers Fahrenholt, Lansdowne, and Buchanan, conducted a bombardment of shore installations, barge concentrations, and staging points on the northeast coast of Bougainville, Banyu Harbor, and Ruri Bay, Solomon Islands, but she encountered no return fire and no air-surface opposition. While transients Bougainville Strait, Woodworth fired 5 salvos at a Japanese tent camp on the northwest tip of Kwasial Island. She then spent the remainder of January through the 13th of February in escort and training exercises to Torokina, barge hunting off Bougainville, escort to Port Purvis, and escort and training exercises at Sydney, Australia. On the 13th of February, Woodworth, in the company of TF-38, covered the advance of the assault on Green Island. The following day, the task force was attacked by a group of 6 enemy dive bombers. St. Louis was hit and suffered the loss of 23 men. Several snoopers later approached the task force and were taken under fire. Woodworth's guns accounted for 1, while she and her sister ships sustained no casualties or damage. On 14 and the 15th of February, Woodworth, with Fahrenholt, Buchanan, Lansdowne, and Lardner, conducted an anti-shipping sweep of St. George's Channel north of Rabaul, New Britain, but encountered no Japanese vessels. On 17 and the 18th of February, the same destroyers bombarded Rabaul and shore batteries on Prade Point. Woodworth fired torpedoes at 2 ships leaving Simpson Harbor and later at large groups of ships in Curvier Bay. She also fired her guns at targets near Timber Point and Cape Gazelle. On the 24th of February, while conducting an anti-shipping sweep along Truk-Kavieng, New Ireland shipping lanes about 60 miles northwest of Kavieng, she made radar contact with a Japanese merchant vessel and a large, heavily laden tanker. Woodworth fired 38 rounds of 5-inch .38 caliber at the merchant vessel, which was closed and sunk by DD-460. Woodworth fishtailed at various times, to avoid shells from the shore batteries. 2 enemy ships were sunk in the harbor, and 1 other was damaged and left burning. The American warship also set numerous barges afire in Stephens Strait and engaged Japanese shore batteries. Woodworth arrived at Port Purvis, Florida Island, on the 26th of February. From 1 through the 21st of March, Woodworth conducted training exercises, escort-in missions, anti-submarine searches, and barge hunting operations throughout the Solomon Islands. She fired at enemy positions and encountered no opposition. Woodworth departed Port Purvis with Buchanan on the 22nd of March, bound for Pearl Harbor. She joined TG-35.6 with a merchant convoy of 5 ships off Weddell Canal and proceeded to Hawaii with it. On the 9th of April, Woodworth cleared Pearl Harbor and steamed to San Francisco. She was dry-docked at the Mare Island Navy Yard on the 15th of April 1944. The destroyer underwent an overhaul and refresher training exercises until the 21st of July, when she joined TG-12.1 and steamed to Hawaii on a presidential cruise with the destroyers Dunlap, Cummings, Fanning, and the cruiser Baltimore. Baltimore was carrying President Franklin D. Roosevelt to Pearl Harbor to discuss future strategy in the Pacific with Admiral Chester Nimitz and General Douglas MacArthur. Following the conference, the task force took the President north to Alaska and the Aleutian Islands. President Roosevelt left Baltimore at Kodiak, Alaska on the 8th of August and proceeded to Bremerton, Washington on Cummings. Woodworth arrived at San Francisco on the 14th of August 1944, but sailed the following day for Pearl Harbor, where she arrived on the 20th of August for more than 1 month of training exercises. On the 30th of September, she entered Ulithi Atoll for anti-submarine patrol, and on the 7th of October, she joined TG-38.1. In late 1944, while refueling at sea from the carrier Salamaua, Woodworth sustained numerous superficial damages as a result of a mid-refueling collision. First Class Quartermaster L.G. Chacona, while manning the wheel during the exercise, struggled against a portward drift until the ship veered off course enough to cause the hawser line, whose usage was discontinued as a result of the accident, connecting the 2 bows to snap. Soon after, the fuel lines also snapped, causing a fuel spill over the decks. As the boats collided, Woodworth sustained heavy damage along the port side bridge. Salamaua sustained only a hole from puncture of Woodworth's port anchor, resulting in Salamaua being nicknamed the Canopener. Woodworth returned to the port of Salerno for repairs before returning to duty. The carriers of Woodworth's task group launched an airstrike on Okinawa on the 10th of October, and the planes later raided Japanese installations at Dapari, northern Luzon. On the 12th of October, the first strikes on Formosa were launched. Woodworth was on a picket station 12 miles east of the formation when she was attacked by Japanese torpedo planes at 18:15. She fired at several planes but failed to score any hits. The ship sustained heavy weather damage and expended 160 rounds of 5-inch ammunition, 100 rounds of 40mm and 320 rounds of 20mm. The following day, 5 Japanese twin-engine, land-based planes attacked the formation. Woodworth shot down one plane which crashed in flames after passing over the fantail. During the action, the cruiser Canberra was hit by a torpedo and sustained heavy damage. A third day of strikes against Formosa on the 14th of October summoned 3 waves of air attacks by the Japanese. Friendly fighters intercepted and repelled the first 2 strikes. The third wave consisted of 8 or 9 enemy aircraft. Woodworth claimed to have shot down 3. 2 planes were seen to burst into flames. It was a pretty sight. All the planes destroyed were credited to the use of Mk-32 projectiles, of which Woodworth used 75%. In this action, the light cruiser Houston was torpedoed and heavily damaged. On the 15th of October, TG-38.1 began preparations for attacks on Japanese installations in the Philippines. The first of these occurred on the 18th of October at Luzon, Philippine Islands. These attacks continued through the end of the month to support the first phase of Major General Douglas MacArthur's liberation of the Philippines. Woodworth was then detached from TG-38.1 and steamed to Leyte Gulf to join TG-30.3 before it sailed for Ulithi. Woodworth spent November in screening exercises, anti-submarine patrol at Eniwetok, and escorted a convoy to the Palau Islands. She spent December patrolling off Peleliu and Angao Island in the Palau Group, conducting independent anti-submarine patrol, and escorting a convoy to Leyte Gulf. Woodworth and the destroyer Macalla then screened a 5-ship convoy to Ulithi on the 2nd of January 1945. There, Woodworth underwent tender availability until the 11th of January. The next day, she assisted in the rescue of LCI-600 and participated in hunter-killer operations with Macalla. Woodworth got underway as 294.18.12 on the 15th of January for gunnery practice. She was boarded by Captain W.P. Burford and staff and served as a station ship for gunnery practice off Kosola Roads, Palau, throughout February. On the 12th of March, Captain Burford relieved Commander D.E. Brown as CTU 94.6.21. Thus, Woodworth became the station ship for the Ulithi Surface Patrol and Escort Group and participated in search and rescue operations for the remainder of March. Woodworth next underwent tender availability and took patrol station off Mugai Channel at the entrance to Ulithi Harbour on the 25th of April. She took part in escort and gunnery exercises with Enterprise and Hubbard until the 5th of May. Woodworth patrolled the transport anchorage area southwest of Okinawa on the 9th of May. The following day, she escorted the carrier Macon Island to Kariamareto Harbor and joined a task unit consisting of 6 CVEs and 9 escorts. For the 10th of May through the 28th of May, Woodworth took part in daily air strikes on Okinawa. On the 28th of May, she and Henley escorted the carrier Natoma Bay to Kariamareto, Okinawa-shima, where Woodworth underwent repairs until the 6th of June. The following day, while conducting air strikes on Miyakareto of Sakashima Gun 2, 2 undetected enemy planes closed the formation and made suicide dives on the escort carriers. One crashed into Natoma Bay and the other into the sea. Woodworth supported air strikes on Okinawa, Kyushu, Japan, and various islands of the Ryukyu from the 8th of June until the 21st of June, when she rescued a crashed pilot from the carrier steamer Bay. She spent 22 and the 23rd of June on radar picket duty off Okinawa and departed the Ryukyu on the 24th of June, bound for Leyte Gulf. She underwent tender availability from 1 to the 10th of July, when she turned her attention to screening the fueling and replenishing of TF-38 and devoted the remainder of July to assisting logistic operations for the fast carrier force during strikes on the main islands of Japan. On the 2nd of August, Woodworth escorted the oiler Neshanik via Guam to Ulithi. On the 12th of August, Woodworth joined in an attempt to rescue a downed pilot, but he was dead when help arrived. On the 14th of August, Woodworth was ordered to proceed independently to Iwo Jima to pick up mail and passengers for the fast carrier force. She joined in the refueling and replenishment of the flat tops on the 18th of August. On the 22nd of August, she was then assigned to a task unit organized around Rear Admiral Thomas L. Sprague in the carrier Ticonderoga, which was charged with providing air coverage for the 1st Occupation Force to go to the Japanese homeland. On the 5th of September, Woodworth took part in firing practices and replenishment until the 10th of September when she anchored in Tokyo Bay. But for brief training and escort periods at sea, she remained through the end of the month. On the 1st of October, Woodworth got underway for Okinawa and left that island on the 6th of October. Bound for home with 50 men and 8 officers embarked as passengers for the voyage. She arrived in Portland, Oregon, on the 19th of October and, 10 days later, headed south for San Pedro, California. Post-war and the Italian Navy, Woodworth was transferred to the Atlantic Fleet in November and proceeded through the Panama Canal to Charleston, South Carolina. After an activation overhaul there, the destroyer was placed out of commission, in reserve, on the 11th of April 1946. She was placed in service on the 30th of January 1947 for Naval Reserve training duty, placed in full commission on the 21st of November 1950. The ship was briefly assigned to the 3rd Naval District before she was decommissioned at the New York Naval Shipyard on the 14th of January 1951 and overhauled to prepare her for transfer to Italy. Her name was struck from the Navy list on the 22nd of January 1951, and she was turned over to the Italian Navy on the 11th of June 1951. She served Italy as artillery, operating as a command ship for motor torpedo boat flotillas until struck from the Italian Naval Vessel Register in January 1971 and scrapped. Named artillery by the Italians, and used for turbine instruction for naval cadets. One of her propellers, with the name Woodworth inscribed, stands on a plinth in front of the Naval School of Cala Chiesa at La Maddalena, Sardinia. Raised and taken to Naples for scrapping after lying half-sunk in front of the Italian Naval School for a number of years. It can be presumed that she sank from neglect, though there are suggestions she was sunk deliberately to obtain the breakup contract.